right, welcome back. What we're going to do now is create a connection to our MySQL database that we created with PHP so that we can start displaying information on our web pages or applications, pulling that information from our database. So the database that we created was here in our phpMyAdmin. I have a couple entries right here. In my first database, I have a users table. And I have these two entries here, Brad Hussey and John Snow, with just a bit of information there. So currently, this is just kind of an ugly spreadsheet with just data being stored in a database. But what we want to do is actually pull this information out and display it in a nice way in the browser on our web pages. And that's where, once we unlock that ability, it is super exciting because then you kind of open yourself up to a whole new world of what you can do with web development. And I'm really excited to share this whole section with you because once I learned how to do this, it just changed everything that I knew about web development, and it just took me to a whole new level. So I'm excited to take you to that whole new level. So first things first, I need you to create a new file, or a new folder rather, on your desktop called MySQL. You can use the uppercase, lowercase, whatever you want, as long as it's MySQL. And in that, I need you to create an index.php and a connection.php file. They're empty right now, but we will fill them out as we go through. Also, before we get started, I want to let you know that we're going to be using something called MySQL the syntax to establish and to work with MySQL. MySQL is essentially stands for MySQL improved. So it's just an improved version, an enhanced version of MySQL with improvements to the system and support and security. Technical stuff that you probably don't really need to concern yourself with. But if you're somebody who knows MySQL already and how to do this section, but you're just kind of coming here just for a brush up or just because you're curious, you may have to kind of relearn what you already know, or unlearn what you know and relearn it in a little bit different of a way. But if you're new to this, then it's going to be totally fine because you're not learning, you're not relearning what you already know, and you're going to start from scratch. If you want to learn more about MySQL I'm going to add some resources to this lecture for you for further reading. But keep in mind, from this point forward, we're going to be working with MySQL There are three ways to work with MySQL Before we get started, I'll just show you here. There is MySQL object-oriented, procedural, and PDO. I'll show you here kind of the syntax difference between the three. So we have the object-oriented way right here. You could see that the syntax here is pretty standard object-oriented syntax. If you don't know what that looks like, then let me just show you the difference between object-oriented and procedural. So check this, the same thing. They're doing the same thing here. So we're going to check connection and look at this if statement. Check connection. We're just using a variable and checking to see if it is available or not. Another thing you could check out here is when you create the connection, we're using a function, MySQL connect, and then we're adding some arguments and parameters into this function. Up here, we're saying new MySQL and we're doing a similar thing, but it's a little bit different because we're establishing the connection in a different way. And you can see again here, connect variable. We're going to use the object operator to connect, display the connect error, and down here we're just displaying the function MySQL connect error. So we're going to be using procedural because we know the syntax already from using PHP. And up here we haven't really been playing around with object-oriented programming, so we're going to skip on this one. But they're all just as valid, but I think we can make the most progress do the most damage with the procedural syntax. And then the PDO, if you're curious, we're not going to do this at all because it requires an extra download, and we just don't know the syntax, and it's not worth it for us to jump into that, widely out of the scope of what we're going to be learning. So we're going to jump in now. Let's go ahead and establish a connection to our MySQL database. So in connection.php, we're going to open up a PHP script. And in our PHP script, there are 4 variables that we need to set up. And let's set them up first and I'll explain them. So I'm going to say server, localhost, username, root, password, root, and database, or DB. my_first_database. Okay, so here we need to establish 4 variables, and each of them are assigned different values. So right here, server, localhost. Basically, this is the server that we are working with because we're on our local computer. We're working with a local database. It's going to be localhost. It's pretty much going to always be localhost, even if you're on live sites. But if you're using like a remote database management or anything like that, then you're going to have to consult with your hosting provider or your network administrator, and they'll easily give you that server name. It could be an IP address, it could be an actual web address, but localhost, if you're just working in a standard PHP MyAdmin on your shared hosting plan, it's pretty much just always going to be localhost. Username and password, if you're on your live server, this is probably going to be different for security purposes, but if you're working locally, root is all you really need to put because we don't really have a username and password set up. That's just the default sort of fallback username password when you don't have that set up, specifically when you're working locally. Database. This is the database we created, my first database. You can see it right here in PHP MyAdmin. My_first_database. That's what you need to do to connect to that. Okay, so we have the variable set up, but we're not doing anything yet. So we need to create a connection. And then I'm going to create another variable called con, or you could say connection even, but I'm just going to say con equals MySQL connect. So function, and in here we're going to pass in those 4 variables as arguments, and that's what we're going to do here. So server, username, password, DB. So those are the 4 parameters or arguments that need to be sent into this function in order to create a connection. So technically, if these are all correct, we would be connected, but we need to test to see if we actually are connected. So let's check connection. And we're going to go ahead and say if, an if statement here. Notice how we're really just using PHP, and that's what's kind of the cool thing about this so far, is that we're just using PHP to connect to MySQL. So we're going to say not con. Basically, that says if it's not connected. That's what that means. Very simple. And then we're just going to use the die function. Sounds a little scary. And the message we're going to send is connection failed, space, close the string, and then concatenate the MySQLi_connect_error function. And that's just going to basically, the MySQL connect error or MySQLi connect error is going to store values and tell you what the error is. And you're just saying connection failed and concatenating that there. So if the connection fails, basically the script will die and it will just spit out this message to let you know this is what happened. And under here, if it does connect successfully, then it will continue down to our echo statement and we'll say connected successfully. And now let's save that. And you're not going to see this yet until you actually, if you navigated to connection.php, but we want to connect it to the index.php because that's what we're going to work with. So PHP include, and simply include your connection.php file. Save that. Go to your browser. Now, before you do that, you need to make sure that, again, you have MySQL server and MAMP, Apache server running with MAMP. And go to your preferences. You need to make sure that your document root, since you created that MySQL folder, is MySQL. It's probably PHP right now, so change it to MySQL so that we can actually run from this root and use those files that we just created. So go ahead and do that. Make sure the servers are running. Waiting here for this to start up. Apache's not running. I'm going to click start and it should click. There we go. It should start up. Now go back to your root, refresh, connected successfully. We are officially connected to our MySQL database. So hang tight. Now that we're connected, we have a lot of stuff that we're going to learn. And in the next video, we're going to actually learn how to select data from our database and display it on the screen. Super exciting. See you there.